Welcome to Behind the Warrior, a podcast presented by the EOD Warrior Foundation. This series will focus on resources, interviews, and topics impacting EOD warriors, their families, and the military community at large.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Maria Shabla, and today we are very excited to be speaking with former Army EOD technician, now actor, Christopher Weakley. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to speaking today and kind of answering and talking about everything I've been going through and been working on since I got
out. Thank you so much. Well, so Chris, I always like to start from the beginning. Can you tell us where you were born and what was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Southern California, which is kind of funny how I just ended back, eventually back up here in Southern California. I was, born in Santa Ana and then kind of raised for a little bit in Huntington Beach. Parents eventually got separated and ended up going to high school in Florida, which is where I ended up joining the Army out of the Jacksonville MEP station. And childhood was pretty good. I'm considering myself pretty fortunate. My mom ended up remarrying somebody that was actually a super amazing human being, and butted heads initially just because I was young and he was a little bit older than my mom, so we kind of had that a raging bull syndrome and butted heads. But as I got older, it was very apparent he loved my mom and took care of my mom and me really well. So wow. I'm very, very, very happy in that aspect. And I grew up with a lot of friends, and which is kind of interesting is a couple of people I went to high school with ended up all at the same duty station at Fort Carson, which was my last duty station before I got out. There ended up being 5 of us that all went to high school together and, would hang out from time to time in Colorado Springs. So it's just kind of this weird situation. I was like, well, this is weird. I wouldn't have expected 5 people that I went to high school with, to all eventually end up at this one duty station. So it was this weird, unique thing, and I was enlisted and 2 of them were officers, and I went to go to one of the officers, my friend Brady, went to his office one day and, I asked for their company commander by first name. They're looking at me like, what is wrong with you? He came out of his office like, no, we grew up together. It's fine.
Wow.
So it was just
cool.
It was just kind of a weird, unique thing, how, kind of a small world type of situation.
Absolutely. That is so cool.
But yeah, just, I had a pretty good childhood and, just kind of things worked out the way they were supposed to.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you ended up back in California too.
Yes. Definitely changed since I moved away in 1996 or 97. So since then back here in 2022, it's way more people. There's now 10 million people in Los Angeles County. So it's,
wow.
It drives a lot of people away is the insane amount of traffic from sun up to sundown type of situation.
Mm-hmm. So Chris, what got you interested in enlisting in the Army?
I knew college wasn't for me right away. It's just I did fine in high school, but just kind of no real direction of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study. So instead of going into debt, to go to college and then figuring out is not something I wanted to do. And so I figured that this would be a good alternative. I almost went, when I was still in high school, I ended up going through EMT program, and I was so close to just doing EMT firefighter, but it just didn't stick. And I just ended up going to the Army and kind of finding my way through there. And obviously I'm very fortunate for everything the Army, provided for me. I was able to go to a really wonderful college, but it just wasn't for me. College right away wasn't for me. I know I would have been Van Wilder, who's in college for 8 years with no degree. I didn't want to end up as one of those type of people. And one of my best friends I grew up with, he ended up graduating in 6 years or 7 years. And, every time I would see him, I'd be like, man, most people who go to school for this long, I usually call them doctor, but you're still not even out yet. But he eventually got, graduated as a physical therapist. So
that's a good job.
Yeah. So, it worked out for him in the end, but that was what I was afraid of actually happening. And I didn't want to get into, that type of scenario.
So what was your original career field when you
So
first went?
I was infantry when I first came in and thought I wanted to do all that, Ranger stuff, and just that didn't work out. And, which, I went on my first deployment in 2005 as infantry, which kind of eventually, because of stuff that happened on that first deployment, which kind of led me into the EOD career field. One of my friend of mine, on July 21st, 2005 was actually killed. Well, he was hit by a roadside bomb in his Bradley, and then he died passed away a few days later. So that kind of like got me into, pushed me into that direction of EOD, and, seeing those guys work and whatnot, and talking to them after it had happened and whatnot, and kind of meeting EOD guys along the way is kind of like that first deployment was kind of like what pushed me in that direction.
Wow.
Of going to EOD school, passing EOD school, and staying in, and doing that, making the most out of it as I could from being EOD.
Wow, Chris. Well, I'm so sorry, and that's a powerful reason to want to switch over to EOD. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your career in EOD?
Yeah, I went to EOD school in 2008 and graduated in 2009. And when I was there, everybody was like, the duty stations were coming up as ones people didn't want. So it was like Fort Riley, I think there was some SIL, and then I ended up going to Fort Drum, and that's where I discovered that I did not like Fort Drum. I don't like being cold. I don't like the snow. I don't like how cold it gets there. The lake effect snow and wind chill there is pretty unbelievable. I dodged the first winter because we deployed to Iraq at the end of 2009 and missed that winter. But when we came back, we obviously hit the next winter, and the local movie theater in town in Watertown closed. So the nearest movie theater was down Syracuse. So it's like, 85, 95 miles one way to the nearest movie theater off of base. So like that was this bull, and just, you got every cold weather piece of gear on, and you're still so miserable. It's just so cold. And it was cool. It was cool. The snow's cool. Then the snow kept coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. It was just this awful onslaught of snow.
Yeah.
And so we, I ended up doing one. Then I ended up backstopping in Fort Polk, because Fort Polk unit was gone. So that was like an interesting experience too, of being at a base that only has one EOD company, and just kind of being there when almost everybody from the base is deployed, and then kind of just doing audit and response calls. So that was a really cool experience. Then decided I want to go out to Fort Carson. Went out there and went on another deployment to Afghanistan, and definitely learned a lot. Met some cool people, had some super interesting experiences, and then just tried to start figuring out, like, is this something I want to stay in forever? So this is like 2012. So this is like when my really close friend passed away, and by a roadside bomb, and this kind of where I like kind of started to push some of those emotions away. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just deal with this at like a later time, just because I need to make sure I don't do anything stupid, which is kind of some things I did that were kind of stupid. So, and unfortunately I found out over Facebook that he had been killed because the comms were shut down, and I tried emailing and calling him through, the phones that we had. And I was just like, oh, hey, like, I hit him up. Went to Facebook to be like, hey man, like, are you okay? And then that's when I saw like all the rest in peace. So it's just like this, like, immense, this tragedy of like finding out that he passed away was over Facebook, and which sent me, which was pretty not pleasant way to find out.
Wow, that is tragic. That's a tragic way to find out. I'm so sorry.
So that was that was 2012, and that was kind of like one of these defining moments of like, oh man, like, yep, I'm just gonna not worry about this now, and I'll figure out this when I have to deal with it. And that was kind of like the downfall of not actually getting help when I probably should have, because it's just still an idea of like, oh, you don't want to say anything because you don't want to look weak, or you don't want to be perceived as weak, or that you're going crazy, or whatever. So kind of came back and had another cool experience of got to do the White House response, EOD response at the White House, which was so cool and so interesting. And it was me, my team member, and then 2 Navy guys from San Diego, and then one of the teams from Andrews. And doing the 24 on, 48 off was such a cool experience, and getting a tour, like walk around the White House, pretty much unescorted, was probably one of the coolest things I got to do in the Army.
What president was it?
It was President Obama. So this is like 2014, I think, 2013 or 14. Yeah. So it was this super cool experience of, all right, cool. Like, yeah, we're on duty for 24 hours, but we have 48 hours off, and, exploring the White House and seeing all the different, we got a little tour by the White House curator, and then we got to, that was really cool. And, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like one of those off the beaten path things. So like, cool, I got to actually say that I worked at the White House, and, that was an amazing experience. And then, it was there when I was using the gym facilities that I actually hurt my shoulder really bad, and which eventually led me to getting out.
Wow.
Yeah. So I ended up having to get shoulder surgery when I got back, and
from the gym.
Yeah. So it was something so trivial as that. That eventually the doc's like, all right, it's not healing properly. Like, you just want to get out, and I was like, yeah, like let me just get out of here, and decided to come out and just get out and kind of take it on, to my next adventure, which ended up being in DC.
Your next adventure ended up being in DC?
Yeah, so when I got out, I ended up getting a job at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and that's where I ended up, where I started college, and, my first job outside of the Army. So it's still kind of like that adjacent, still in, but still not out, but I was a contractor, and life was a little bit better because now I could be like, all right, I don't like this, I can just quit and leave.
Yeah, you had that freedom. So when you got out of service, you said that you had issues with anger, but were not interested in pursuing traditional therapy, and instead pursued acting, which became your therapy. And I love the idea of art as therapy. So can you tell our listeners about who you were when you initially got out, and then how acting has changed you?
Yeah, just this idea of just being like super angry all the time, and just not knowing how to like process it, because like anger, I don't say necessarily is like a bad thing, because it's just as a valuable emotion and can help you drive whatever. I'm sure a lot of sports athletes use anger to, if they're in a slump, help them get out of slump. But this idea of I just didn't like being angry all of the time, where I just like felt like it was just like being in DC and angry was just not the place to go, just because like all of the traffic was just absolutely ridiculous all of the time. And so that was just kind of one of those things, which I'll get back to that in a second. But it's just, I don't know, I just didn't like being angry all of the time, just about the most trivial nonsense. It's like, okay, like, why are you getting angry about that? It's like, it's so dumb. And, I still, work on it from time to time. And, I try the traditional therapy, and it just, I don't know, it's just hard to explain it to like a therapist who had never been in and had never, experienced it. And, they're listening, but to me, I just never felt like they were actually like listening.
Yeah.
And, I eventually just had to get out of DC. DC is not for me, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. It's just, people are just so terrible and just so backstabby, which is, I just couldn't deal with that, and just getting angry over the dumbest things down there, which is how I ended up down in Atlanta and transferred colleges. And, I went to my, it's so weird saying my alma mater. It's so weird saying that. That's just definitely not something I would say, but and having now gone to college, when I started there, I was the only undergrad veteran when I started there. So like, it was kind of like almost like essentially like a fresh start, because like, cool, like, I don't really hang out with too many veterans very often. I've kind of, started to make my friend circles outside of that because they help me stay grounded. And, people that have never been in, just, I don't know, it's just kind of just make me feel more human, I guess. And when I was going through therapy down there at school, another friend of mine, one of my former soldiers, was killed on his first deployment. I got back into therapy there, and one of them was anger management. So like what my anger management therapist started to do was have me drive through downtown Atlanta in the middle of the day in bumper to bumper traffic. And I was like, oh my God, are you insane? Like I'm already like raging when I'm driving. You know what I mean? So, the way he kind of had me look at it was, look at it as if you see somebody that's driving down the breakdown lane and you pull your truck to block them from getting by all the traffic, you've now put one aggressive person to two aggressive person because now you're being aggressive. So you've just kind of like doubled, how many aggressive people there now are on the road because you decided like, oh, I have a truck, I can block them from going down the breakdown lane. So once I got into that mindset, I was like, you know what? Okay, yeah, I'll kind of, view, how I drive a little bit differently and kind of worked on that. So like, that's why I don't really have any problem sitting in traffic here in LA is because I already, had this work I put in going through this program, which was funny is that my school and Wounded Warrior program actually had funded this like joint program where it's like inpatient and outpatient. And since I'd gone there, I really wasn't somebody that needed to stay there like under supervision. So like they had given me like a bunch of free acupuncture, therapy, yoga, and all these resources, but nobody was using them because like my college just didn't have a lot of veterans.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that and then once I got into college and I started knocking out all the classes I needed for my actual specific degree, I was like, oh, let me try theater, and I went to the theater professor and Professor Mary Lynn Owens, super wonderful woman. She's very nice and kind, and make sure she still checks on me, and we email and before every semester I'd always check in with the professor, like, hey, like this is who I am. Let's like I have a lot of stuff going on, and there's this idea of like, oh, college is a certain way, like. I went to them as an adult and talked to them like an adult, and they treated me like an adult. And they're like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, yeah, it's like, I show up to class on time and do the work and put in the effort. Like, they're gonna treat you like an adult. So, when one of my former soldiers, Sergeant Joey Coletti, had was KA, I was just like an emotional mess, and I went to my professors and I was just like, listen. This is what happened. They're like, oh my God, like, yes, take all the time you need. And I ended up taking some incompletes, and they let me, all the professors over the summer, help me make up the work and taught me things I'd missed when I was in and out of class, and starting to try to get some help. And that's when I had
bless them. That's awesome.
I had some pretty amazing professors. And so that's when I got into the theater, and I was telling my theater professor, like, hey, like this is my story, this is what I've been through. And she's like, oh my God, like that's way more, than, 99.9% of, most college students, experience, that what they're going through. And that's why I first started to get into theater and doing acting work with like Acting 101 and, doing some exercises that help you focus on the other person. Because that's what acting is it's your relationship with the other person that's across from you, or it's two people or whoever many people are in a scene. And you start doing some of these building exercises, like this mirror exercise where, you hold up your hands like this and you lock eyes with the other person. They're doing the same thing, and you just kind of mirror the same thing they're doing, but you don't look away. And it's something that a lot of people have a hard time doing.
They do.
Looking at and I had never really even considered it, and I've noticed it more as I started to get more experience and get more acting classes, how often people look away because they're just uncomfortable with locking eye contact. Because like, it's weird when you just lock eyes and you don't, it's people view it as just like, oh, it has to be like this romantic thing. Like, there's a lot of people that I'm not romantic with that I lock eyes with, and we're in the middle of a conversation because I want to pay attention to what you're telling me. But you see a lot of people that just have a hard time with that, just because it is weird to not look away, and or you're thinking about a thought and you look away, or and how many times I've thought about that. I'm like, yeah, how many times, like right now, it's like I'm thinking about all the times I wasn't looking at someone, or was this being perceived as like, oh, this person doesn't care.
Yeah, I think it does come across that way, that you don't really care.
It does, and which may not necessarily, it's obviously not necessarily the case. Like, you could look away and, sometimes you just think about something like, oh yeah, I do remember this time where blah, 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 however you're relating to the story. So I started getting more theater there, and I started doing acting lessons outside of college. At this acting studio in Atlanta called Drama Inc. And they have this, I went through this first program, was it like 6 or 8 weeks, where it was like, you pretty much use past traumas to kind of like get to an emotional state.
Wow.
And I really wasn't about that at all. I really wasn't about that life. 'Cause it's like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'm going to think about these people that were killed in combat. All right, cool. I can't just go home and see them and be like, okay, yeah, it's, it's fine now. Or I think about this, my brother who died, or a parent, or what a past, pet. Yeah, it works for some people, but I just don't want to have to kind of like put my mental health, which is already kind of like in a not good spot, in a worse good spot, thinking about things that made it worse in the first place.
Wow.
So there was another program there, and the teacher, Dustin Lewis, I was telling him, I was like, hey, like I did this other program here at the studio. It's not for me. It's like, I do this program is based off this, it's called the Meisner program, based off this acting teacher named Meisner, and it's all using your imagination. It's all based on how you're feeling and how you are in the moment, and listening and reacting. Because that's all acting is. You're listening and reacting. You're listening to what they're saying, and you're reacting to what they're saying. And so, there's 12 of us in this class for 6 months, and, some of the people in the class could cry right away. And it's just like, man, like, why can't I do that? Like, this isn't fair. Like, they can get, to crying in the blink of an eye, and, is growing frustrated. And it's just like, why am I not getting to this point? And, my acting teacher was just like, you have to trust the process. It's just not going to happen overnight. It's just not going to be like, you wake up one day and you're like, oh yeah, I'm like this perfect person. Bing. It's like, that just doesn't work for anybody. And so like over time, like this method is based off of the listening and reacting and using your imagination. And, one of my things that can get me, that eventually we found that gets me upset, is my dog. And, with that is like, everything is an action in like a scene. You're overcoming something, or your objective is to convince something, or like, if I don't do, you use this Meisner method as like, if I don't complete my objective to convince this person, this, for example, my dog would get put down. So like, you have X amount of time to get the scene done. And then if you don't get it done, all right, my dog is gonna be put down. And so we were doing the exercise, and if, like, for example, I think this one time, like, I think the one I was doing was like, if I didn't color perfectly within the lines of this coloring book within 2 minutes, my dog Mia was gonna be put down. And you just have to believe. You just have to work on believing in that. If you don't finish by the time the buzzer, like we'd have like a little like a kitchen alarm, or like little alarm that would go off at 2 minutes, that you would my dog, and then it just happened, and it just happened as you're doing your exercise with the person, because it's like a repetition exercise where like somebody says something, you say something back, so you're kind of doing multiple things at one time, and then all of a sudden it just kind of hit me. And I slowly started to be like, okay, I can open up about that, because one of the problems I had of with the acting stuff is needing to be perfect, but there is no such thing as perfect in art. Just look at any art hanging in a gallery. There's nothing perfect about it. There's always something off about it. And this idea of coming from EOD, where you have to be perfect because you can get seriously hurt, or somebody hurt, or yourself killed, or somebody else killed. So like, I had this mentality of like tunnel vision, of like only seeing through the visor on the bomb suit helmet, of like perfect. And it's been really hard to kind of dial back that like perfectionism of needing to be right and needing to do it perfect, and slowly like letting that go. And that was like such a hard obstacle to overcome, because a lot of EOD techs, everyone is a perfectionist. Everyone's really good at their job. And not saying that people who have been killed are not good at their job, but everyone strives to be perfect and be the best EOD tech and whatnot. So this kind of helped me move away from that. And this is where like the listening starts to come in, where everyone's guilty of doing is talking over like another person. Like, you don't let them finish a sentence. And that's the same thing with lines. Like, you're not just going to cut them off. You can't respond until something happens. It's called the pinch and ouch exercise, where like, if you make an ouch sound before I pinch you, then you clearly, that's not how that works. You have to wait for something to happen. So if you're not listening, or, waiting for something to happen, then, that's this idea of, how you actually listening. So you have to wait till you actually be pinched till you can respond. You have to wait for the person to finish their line, unless obviously the line calls for you to cut them off, but you still have to react to what they're saying. So it's helped me focus on listening to everybody, whether it be at a Starbucks counter or at a restaurant, or just general people that I meet, or at work, or out at a bar, listening to people, like what they're actually saying. Like, people listen, but they're not actually listening, and, taking an interest in what they're saying. I really had never been, cognizant of that until like I started getting into, the acting, and, where like it matters when you don't listen. If you cut somebody's line off, then you weren't listening. You were just saying line. Like, no, there's nothing in that. You need to be able to let yourself be open in hearing and let it impact you. So that's kind of where that went. And I've done a lot more, acting class since then, and done some short films. And last summer, filmed my first co-star on a network TV show, which is hopefully coming out this summer. But it's so interesting, because on that set experience, just, when I'm doing my scene, and, there's like 25 extras, and I'm talking to the person I'm getting ready to arrest. And after the scene was over, because I'm arresting a guest star, and it's like one of those like scenes right before the episode starts, kind of like, the crime happening, and then like the credits roll. Yeah, the credits roll. And I was talking to the actress, who I'm arresting and talking to afterwards. She's like, you like really intimidated. She's like, you didn't look away when we were doing our line. She's like, you were making me uncomfortable. And like, that's the goal, is, to be there in the moment for them, so they have something to react off of. So for me, it was just locking eyes and using the, the strict tone, like, oh, I'm taking you to jail.
You were intense.
Yes, it was. And it's just made me an overall like better listener to everything that I'm saying, and, helping me pick up on small details, which I think is also like a part of like the EOD, is looking at things that are out of place, and, trying to find something in common with the person that I'm talking with. So I try to be more in tune with that. And, people are just like, well, how can you find anything in common with, college students that are like, you're almost old enough to be their dad? I'm like, well, we already got something in common. Like, we're in the same class, we're at the same college. So like, that's something, it'd be no different than getting like a 19-year-old private who just graduated EOD school. It's like no different than that to me.
Yeah.
Other than being in a collegiate environment and, in academia. So, it's been allowed me to be more in touch and open to how I'm feeling, where I'm like, no, I'm going to definitely tell you how I'm feeling. If I'm upset or angry, it's no longer I'm shoving that down. Like, oh no, I'm telling you how I'm feeling. If I'm mad, I'm telling you. If I'm upset, I'm telling you.
Wow. How empowering.
It is. And it's helped me like, just like be like more true to myself, where, people, lie to themselves. Like, yeah, I'm okay. And it's like, okay, are you though? are you really okay?
Wow.
And it's like you have these conversations with yourself, and not like, I hear 17 voices in my head. It's I talk to myself like, oh, like, how do you feel about that? Like, no, I don't think I like that, or yeah, actually that does make me happy and open to more of these emotions that, I kind of had just dialed away. And it's hard work because it's like a muscle you have to keep exercising. It's just not going to just get better. Like, it'd be like, De Niro becoming Rob De Niro after one role. No, like, it's something he's refined and crafted his entire career. Leonardo DiCaprio, Helen Mirren, Jodie Foster, whoever. It's, all these people have like continued to work these muscles, and you can definitely see it when you watch stuff, when somebody's listening and how they're reacting. And it's made me appreciate that art form a lot more, especially with theater, because it's not just like, oh, hey, I cut this and we'll just we'll reshoot it. It's like, no, you're on stage for a packed theater, or even if there's only 5 people in there, like, you have like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 pages you have to memorize, whatever. It's, you have to put in the work. And I think that, a lot of EOD guys, going through EOD school, it is a lot of work. You have to do a lot of memorizing. You have to put in the work at the study halls. Like, it's not just free. You just go there, you have to put in the effort and put in the work. And that's one thing I like is putting in the work is actually having more benefits. Even if I'm just practicing, lines with whoever, I help friends with their lines, like, it allows me to be more open and liberating and free. Or like, why hide it? Why hide how you're feeling? Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, how I feel. Obviously, like, this life death situation, this is not the time to be like, dude, I had this epiphany of like, XYZ. Obviously time and place, but like, it's very liberating to be able to talk to people about how you feel. And I think people are very receptive when you do talk about it. And there are actors, a lot of veterans that have turned to acting that are pretty notable now. Like, probably one of the biggest ones right now is Adam Driver. Used to be a Marine and went to Juilliard, and he talks about in his TED Talk how he talks about transitioning and from Marine to actor and whatnot. And it's pretty inspiring. That TED Talk was kind of one of the things that kind of got me on that path, and why I had never even considered it, because people have this idea of like Hollywood elite, everyone is like this, and not necessarily the case. Of course, you're going to find people that are elitists everywhere you go for any career field, but I have been able to get the benefits. I may never become the next, De Niro or Pacino or whatever, but my mental health is amazing. I'm able to talk about how I'm feeling, and that's all because I went to something that people don't really talk about a lot, is the arts and, what acting is. People just think it's getting up there and reading lines, but it's just being emotionally vulnerable and letting yourself be impacted to how you're feeling.
Wow. Well, and it sounds like I keep thinking about mindfulness when you're telling me about, just like being present and being mindful. And it sounds like theater has really transformed you.
Yeah, and it's this idea, like, when I was doing the 6-month program, when I was just 12 other people and the teachers, it's like I was in an area where like I was only veteran out of the 12 of us, so like I could talk about how I was, feeling or what made me angry or upset, and no one there is judging you at all. People like in these classes aren't judging you, like they're just listening, and it's stuff that you've experienced that most other people will never experience, will have never had any type, and everybody has their own trauma. And I don't try to say this type of trauma like supersedes another type of trauma. Like, that's definitely not the case. But I was definitely in an environment where I could just be myself and not have anybody judge me, at all, which was like a nice feeling where I could just go be me and just let it loose, and wherever the emotion takes me.
So, Chris, was this something that you thought about doing as a child, or, how did this come about? acting?
I don't know. I don't know if it was just like, maybe it was just like subconsciously there. Because like, I don't know. Is this, I think I just had been like, oh man, this might be like pretty cool, like fun thing to do, and pretend to be somebody else. And this is where you kind of like get into like, you know, the different acting methods. We have like method acting, where it's just like you are actually that person. And Daniel Day-Lewis is like a big proponent of that. And when he was playing Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln movie, like you had to refer to him as Mr. Lincoln or Mr. President. And like he had gotten like pneumonia, and he's like, I only want to be treated with medicine that was around when Lincoln was around. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, that's insane. No, we are not doing that. I think people get caught up in like that type of stuff, or they hear that and just like, oh, these actors are crazy. And I don't know. It just, I was like,
wow, like to get in character, you mean?
Yeah, to get in character.
Oh, wow.
Where you're like, you are that person. You are Mr. Lincoln. You are Abraham Lincoln, or like that, whatever character you are. And it was more like, you know, I had watched, I don't know if it's necessarily as a kid, and I didn't really do any theater in high school. And I don't know, it's just because it was just maybe like my perception of what I thought acting was, or the arts, or whatever, or just, you know, not having the confidence of doing it, or just being scared to fail. Like I don't know what, if maybe there's just some subconscious block on it. But once I did try it, I'm glad that I did, and definitely glad I started with theater, because that's where like I really started to appreciate the arts and acting as like a whole.
That is so awesome. And can you tell our listeners about some of the projects that you've worked on, or that you will be working on in the future?
So the done a bunch of shorts, which is what you need to like actually start. Because it's the same thing as I was mentioning earlier. It's like you just can't just roll up and be like, all right, I'm here, put me in this. So it started with shorts, and then mentioned earlier, the TV show I'm be on this summer is called All Rise, to be season 3, episode 16, and it's not the longest amount of time on camera, but it's my first network television credit. So for me, like that was like a really huge big deal, because
that is awesome.
So you need those credits to get more credits, but it's really hard to get those credits because somebody has to take a chance on you to put you in one of those roles where you can get that experience. So it's like you need this, but you need somebody to give you like your foot in the door. And I've been pretty fortunate that another veteran gave me that opportunity on his show.
So can you tell us what your role is?
It's just a police officer, and I'm arresting the guest star of the episode. So it's me coming in, telling her she's under arrest for murder. And yeah, I think it was like maybe like 5 or 6 lines, but it was my first, for me, like it's my first network speaking role, which is kind of like that first hump that you want to get. It's like that first real legitimate win, because when you get that first like legitimate SAG-AFTRA credit, then that's when it starts opening the doors, because now your vita is like, okay, cool, he was hired for this, he's probably reliable. Whereas like you haven't really proven that you're reliable. That's why you don't really see unknown people being put in charge of. It'd be like you pulled some random guy off the street to be Captain America when they made the Captain America movies, or Iron Man. Like, yeah, you're not going to put some unknown person that has no experience in some major thing. So, that's where I got started with that. And
it's like your street cred.
Yes, it's essentially your street cred to get you more street cred by getting you into positions out of street cred. And right now it's kind of weird, because like the WGA strike and the writer's strike with studios like, I don't want to pay you this amount of money, and writers are like, well, you need to pay us more money because we can't afford to do what you want on what you're paying us, when you guys are making CEO heads at studios are making like $40 million a year.
Oh my
And it's like,
goodness.
which is so crazy, like such a crazy amount of
40 million
money.
a year. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
And so, like, everyone's trying to stay, SAG-AFTRA is trying to stay strong with the WGA, the Writers Guild of America. Then you have the Directors Guild of America, and nobody, actors and directors and producers don't want to cross the picket line because, like, you want to stand firm with the people that are giving you those words to say.
Yeah.
So it's like a really weird time right now of not a lot of stuff happening, and like, do people feel like it's right to continue to act when there's no writers on set? So that's definitely like an interesting situation right now. And since I just moved back out here with my new job, like I just got back into classes, and I've just been kind of like taking it day by day, week by week, and getting back, exercising those muscles, of acting, and, working with people again. And, there's no timeline for me. Like, I don't feel like I have to be like, all right, I need to like do these 10 roles by the time I'm 50, type of situation where, there's some timeline that I feel I have to meet. So like, I'm not really like in a rush to be like, I have to do more acting roles every year. Where, there are some people that are out there like that. So, I'm just not one of those people. So like right now I'm just focusing on getting more acting classes, getting more experience, and just kind of like getting more
and you have a
tune.
full-time job, right? So,
and I have a full-time job, which kind of like takes the I have to put the roof over my head before I do the extracurricular activities. And Alan Rickman's first movie was Die Hard, and he was like in his 50s. So I feel like I still have 15 years to get to that point. So if he was in his 50s making his first movie Die Hard, and obviously he went on to a successful like film career, but I'm not really like trying to feel like I have to do it because I don't want to shoot my shot and not be ready.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, there are people that have been doing it way longer, that it comes for a little bit easier. And, I'm not against putting in the work, for it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Well, and that kind of reminds me of the saying that success is when preparation meets opportunity. So I just feel like this, like such a strong, like passion for acting, and you're like really putting in the work and getting this great foundation. So I am fully expecting you to be a famous actor one day.
I'm trying, and that definitely was the case. When I did the first thing, the first co-star, and which it's gonna be super weird to see my name on a TV show, seeing credit. Like, so my name will be after the credit, will be during the credits after this episode's over, which is like, that's like a negotiable thing you can do, is like above the credits or below the credits, which is like whatever. Like, I don't care about that at this point in my career, but I got the opportunity. I was finally ready to be it. Where if I had just like tried to jump into it right away, and it's like, yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to like shoot my shot and then had not been ready, and then kind of like set myself back even further.
Yeah, that's super awesome. So you recently moved from Atlanta to LA. Yes. How is it? And are you rubbing elbows with famous people now?
So I personally love it here. I love the food. I love the weather. The fact that I'm definitely a city boy. So if I want to do stuff in the city, like, from my apartment, I can walk to Dodger Stadium, which, like, I love baseball, and I can walk to Dodger Stadium in like 25 minutes. I could, the crypto arena where the Clippers, Lakers, and Kings play is like maybe 35 minutes walk, like in the opposite direction. So it's not that far either. And I can take like one of the little like scooters you can find on every corner. Obviously, there's things here I don't like. I don't like paying $5 a gallon for gas, which is. I can't really do anything about that, but luckily for the most part, I work from home, so I don't drive too often. But the way people are, I think people have this misconception of how people in Southern California are, and you're going to always go to places that you people rub you the wrong way. It's that's just a fact of life. You're not gonna get along with everybody everywhere at so I like it. Yeah, I've run into a couple people here, and they both were super kind, and a friend of mine owns a bar in North Hollywood, and met some people that were there as well.
Who did you meet?
I don't want to say.
You don't want to name drop?
I don't. It'd be weird.
You know what's so funny, Chris? I have to tell you, years ago, I went out to LA, one and only time, and I ended up spending some time in Topanga. But I remember we went to this coffee shop, and literally like every person in the coffee shop was so Botoxed. Like they almost looked like cartoon-esque. Like I had never seen anything like it in my life before or after. It was really crazy.
If you go to certain neighborhoods around here, you'll definitely see those type of medical treatments. We'll put that in quotation marks. On every street corner, kind of like a Starbucks. But what I just don't really like. If I see them, I'm like, oh, cool, that person. But like, I don't really say anything. Cause like, man, they're just trying to like live their life like everybody else. And like, people.
I know. I'm not placing any judgment whatsoever. Yeah. I just, from my sheltered life in a military family, like I just have never seen anything like that. And like Hollywood, I think there's a lot of anomalies that you won't find in other places of the world.
There is. I mean, like I said, there are definitely fake people out here, and it's just like, okay, yeah, you're definitely out here because you want to make it as the next big whoever, or you think that you can, you'll make friends with the right people, and in some cases that does happen, and it just like in a career field, it's definitely, if you know people, it makes things a lot easier. But yeah, I personally love it out here. I've made some like amazing friends out here, outside the military, where I've just like met people at whether it be acting classes or just like out in town. And I personally like the beaches here. There's a lot of beaches here, and if I want to go to the mountains, I can go up to Big Bear or Mammoth. There's a lot of stuff to do out here outside of Los Angeles. People in Los Angeles, all they do is like talk about Los Angeles or LA, and I feel like the vibe here is different than other major cities, where it's not New York City or it's not Chicago or Miami. It's I don't know how to describe it outside of that, but I personally loved coming here. Just way happier here. Like I said, I'm not a country boy, so for me, some people they like live in the country. That's not for me. I don't like that, where like the nearest store is like your, corner market, corner grocer, which is also a gas station. Like that life is not, that is not a life for me.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
Well, good. It sounds like you're loving it.
The nice weather year round is pretty amazing. Well, it's like, all right, cool. It's November. I'm going to go to the beach in November, and I actually will have to put sunscreen on because I'll probably get sunburn, and it's like 75 degrees.
Wow.
That aspect is nice, but then sometimes when it's like, okay, can I get something a little bit cooler? Like, so that's the downside, one of the major downsides to it. And just, as long as you're okay with, 10 million people being in Los Angeles County, then
oh, wow.
That's fine.
A lot of people.
It's a lot of people. So.
Well, so art therapy is really starting to emerge in the veteran world. What are your feelings about art as therapy, and do you have any words of encouragement for EOD techs out there that may be struggling?
I think it's fantastic. And, you don't have to just focus on acting. Like, it could be whatever. It could be writing. There's actually a program called Veterans Writing Program. You can Google it. And essentially what it is like, it's kind of like a contest, but it's like a mentorship program with like TV show writers and movie writers, where you have to submit to a script, whether it be some type of writing sample, whether it be like a TV pilot episode you wrote or a feature film that you wrote, which is like about 120 pages, or a short, and you go through these different layers where they get, all right, cool, you move on to the next round. And then if you're selected, they put you in a mentorship program with active TV show writers or movie writers and whatnot. And then you get to pitch the movie to some people at the very end of the year-long program, but like you spend the whole program with, people, and there'll be like 5 or 6 people in a group, and with that mentor, and you do your writing, your exercises all week, you write a little bit, and then you critique it, and I think it's armchair quarterback in like a good way, which I'm not sure if that's like even possible, but you armchair quarterback and be like, all right, you got to be open to criticisms as well. Be open to criticism. Be like, okay, yeah, that, you write something. Okay, yeah, that was, I've written 2 scripts now. One because I did 2 in college screenwriting, and it's just like, oh yeah, everyone thinks they're gonna go out there and be like, write the next, Academy Award winning best original screenplay. It's like, it's again, same thing with like the art of the acting. It's like, you need practice. Like you need to know the pacing and, writing good characters and good dialogue. And, you're not going to go out there and be writing, Aaron Sorkin, West Wing on your first go. That's not a thing. But, there's writing programs that are like that where they help veterans write. And there's other, actual painting classes that are set up for veterans. And, you literally have nothing to lose. In my eyes, you have nothing to lose by going and giving it. Because like, what happens if you find out that you do like it? That's how it worked with me in acting. I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go give this a try, and if I like it, then cool. If I don't like it, also cool. Like this is not for me. Like I literally lost nothing other than some money for like acting lessons. But on the other end, what happens if I find something I do like that means a lot to me and whatnot, or like you find that you do like painting a lot, or drawing, or stand up, or whatever. There's just so many venues of like the arts that you can approach. Photography is another one. Literally, just go buy a camera and take pictures of things. That's literally it. Like go outside, go outside and be in nature and take pictures of things. Like okay, cool. Like obviously, if you have the money to buy a good camera, obviously makes the pictures look better. But like, get you outside, be in nature. And I know there's a lot of programs that are starting doing like stuff with horses and like farms and stuff like that. So, a lot of these programs are free if you apply to them. There are a lot of places that will do grants for veterans, because we're considered an unrepresented portion of the population. And there's a theater here, an acting theater, that is actually doing like 8 weeks of Shakespearean acting free for veterans, and it's like $300 for like people that are not veterans. So like, wow. They're free. Yeah, they're free resources like that are out there. You just have to Google, and give it a try. Just you're obviously brave if you want to go be EOD. So like, just apply in my mind. Like if you're brave enough to do that, you can be brave enough to get out there and put yourself open into trying it, and just be okay that it just may not be good right away. When I started writing the first script in my screenwriting class, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then you look back at it and you're like, okay, no, that was definitely very bad dialogue, and this is just really terrible and whatnot. So that is type of thing. And then like I've also made some amazing friends and like mentors through like social media, which I think that's how I met Jen Marshall, Navy veteran, and she is in Stranger Things, and plays one of the characters' moms. And it's honestly just like being kind and reaching out to people will get you so far by not being a dickhead to people. And you're just going out there and just being kind and meeting people. And I've made some friends, some writers who have been very successful at TV shows and movies. I'm like, hey, like, can you read this and kind of give, critiques, or like, is there stuff that you recommend, or like, how do you, kind of just guide me? And most of the time, all of them like, yeah, sure. Like that's literally it. Just asking, literally like zero effort. Just, find a little bit of courage, to, striking up a conversation and being kind and, asking for help. And that's kind of like the biggest thing is, asking for help, once you, give yourself permission to get help and be better. It's a pretty amazing thing. And I think that's where a lot of like veterans, not just EOD, is don't give ourselves like a lot of permission to do things. We don't give ourselves our permission to be happy or to process, things we have seen or we've done. And, it sucks. You're hard pressed not to find an EOD tech that doesn't know a handful of people that are on the wall. Like it's hard to give yourself the permission to be upset or angry for a while, or like, well, why did they do this, or why did this have to happen, that type of thing. And it's like, give yourself that permission to be upset, to be angry, to be sad and happy, and you deserve to be happy. You've had all these things happen, like you deserve happiness. Like I'm always confused on when I hear some like veterans talk, is like they'll feel like they don't deserve to be happy or move on or whatnot. And I feel like it's like a really like lonely way. Yeah, you could be married or significant other or partner or whatever, but like if you don't give yourself permission, that sucks. That sucks. It sucks that you feel like you can't give yourself permission to be happy and move on from things. And it's like, oh cool, I had to do this post blast on this car full of innocent people that were killed by roadside bomb in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever, or you had to do a post blast on fellow troops or an allied country or whatever. It's like you see all these awful things. Like it's okay to talk about those things and give yourself the permission. And that's where I kind of went with the arts, where, I feel like sometimes maybe veterans are less like, well, you didn't have it as bad as I do, which is, everyone has like, their level of what they could put up with and how much is just too much for them. Whereas like if I saw some, dead kids, well, I don't have kids. So for me, like I can easily shut that off. Whereas somebody who has multiple kids and you see dead kids, whether it be like a firefighter, police officer, that's probably going to hit them a lot harder than it's going to hit me. And I found that through the acting is like, it was nice to have those people that were completely separated from the military that just let me give myself permission to talk about why I was struggling with things and why I had feelings about things and why I was feeling a certain way, or why I was feeling, angry or sad or mad at myself, or why I can't let things go. And I think art is kind of like that way to give yourself permission. You're giving yourself permission to start with a blank canvas, kind of like painting. It's just that's it. Like that's literally a blank canvas. It's your permission to start over. And that's how like I view that. The acting as well is like I'm starting with a blank canvas. I didn't have any experience, so like I'm only gonna be whatever I put into it. So same thing with painting or drawing or sculpting or photography. Like you have if you've never done those things, like that's a blank slate for you. Like why not just start over? Give yourself permission to start over. Like it's okay. And this acting teacher I had named Brad Brinkley in Atlanta, and that was like probably one of like the things I remember like I hold on to the most when he said, when I was talking to him about it, it's like, man, like you just need to give yourself permission to be open, to be okay that, you did go through some traumatic things, that it's okay, and give permission to be kind to yourself, because everyone is super hard on themselves, especially if you don't do amazing in like the first attempt, where, I still struggle with that too. It's just like, I want to go out there and crush it, be good at everything at every time. But, him just, reassuring me and like telling me like, hey, give yourself permission to be like this. Like, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay for you to do this. Yeah, it's okay for you to do that. And okay, yeah, you gave yourself permission to try. For him, I was working on some different type of accents. He's like, yeah, give yourself permission to fail at the accent, man. Like, you're not going to be good at a Southern accent or an Irish or a British.
What's your best accent?
We don't do the accent. Those are still a work in progress.
Okay.
But it's so funny is because when you start thinking about like Southern accents, like how many different types, because then he's a dialect coach and he's worked on like a lot of shows, and
cool.
Yeah, he is so funny is when he's talking about like Southern accents, because you can do like the foghorn leghorn, we just talk the foghorn leghorn, where it's like the stereotypical Southern making fun of people on like a TV show type of over that, where instead of just doing like a more Southern drawl.
Here it comes. That's pretty good.
So those ones is funny. Is just giving yourself permission to play with that and just sometimes let's go out in public and just play around with the accents. Cause like, I'll never see this person ever again. Like, who cares? To me, it's like a game, almost. It's like, keeping a straight face while you do this like ridiculous accent. And
that is so funny.
Yeah. So that's just something to kind of like take the anxiety off.
Yeah.
And I know some people might be like afraid of failing it or being nervous when they do it. I'm like, yeah, of course that. But like actress Viola Davis, Academy Award winner, she like said in an interview, she's like, I'm nervous every time I get on set. It's like, all right, I got to keep that in perspective. If Viola Davis is like, I'm nervous every time I step on set, like, okay, that's probably okay if me still being new into acting gets nervous every time she goes on set.
Yeah.
It's nervous for me to do it too, but it's like a different type of nervous now. Whereas I'm nervous, but like I don't know how to. It's not the same. Just giving myself that permission to be nervous and know that it's gonna might not be go as I wanted, but it's more of like the journey type of situation and open to that. So that's like one of the biggest things I love taking from that actor was just give yourself permission. And I don't think a lot of people do that enough, whether it doesn't have to be military, just people in general. They don't give themselves enough permission to be happy. Obviously a lot of things going on in the world where it's like, okay, yeah, it's hard for me to give myself permission if I'm like in the Ukraine right now. Like, obviously situation dictates, but like for here, I just give myself permission to be happy and experience things day to day and try not to get too wrapped around the axle about feeling a certain way. And that would be kind of like one of my bigger takeaways to give to people is like give yourself permission. Just give yourself permission to write a journal or try stand up. And a lot of places like are now not allowing people to heckle anymore, which it's hard sometimes not to. And I've had some friends here that like, dude, come to my stand up. I've gone to their stand up and I'm just like, oh my God, this is so terrible. But like, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that it's terrible, but it's just, to me, it's just like, all right, that's just not for me. Your brand of humor just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission to go enjoy those things or go watch a stand up or go, try a stand up class or an improv class and let yourself be wild because, those go all over the place. So yeah, that would probably be one of my biggest like takeaways is just be kind to yourself and give yourself, permission to do something you've always wanted to do, but you've been kind of scared or nervous or you thought it was stupid. And, what happens if you do like it? Literally you lose nothing if you don't like it. And then if you do like it, then you gain everything.
True,
you gain something that's yours, that's personal to you, that you like to do by yourself.
I love it. I love your message. And I think it's one that our community really needs to hear. And so I'm just so excited about this journey and that we were able to talk to you about all of this. So I want to ask if there's people out there that are listening to this and they want to follow you. Is there different platforms where they can follow you and follow your career?
Like, and people have like questions, and like I've had other people like, I do Twitter and Instagram. I'm not really on Facebook anymore, but like I still get like notifications. But like, if you want, I'm always like willing to like be like, hey, yeah, this is my experience. So if like they don't want to, listen to this entire podcast about me talking about it, I can do it like a little bit more like Cliff Notes version, but like I'm always happy to talk about it. I've talked to like other veterans, not necessarily EOD, that have reached out to me because I think Dave Silva, he reached out to you, and I had never interacted with him when I was still in. So
oh wow,
it's like hit me up. Like I'm always like willing to talk about it. Like I'm always like super open about it, and like it is hard work. It's not free. It's just like you're not I put in the work and I'm working to get better and surrounding myself, but I also surround myself with people that want to see me get better as well. And those people are out there. There are people out there that want to see you succeed. There are literally thousands of roles to go out to people. There's space for literally every single person. Like, you just look at a TV show and you see so many different types of people, or movies and streaming platforms, and obviously things are kind of weird right now, like I said, with the WGA strike. But like there's a platform for everybody, and I've slowly gotten into some photography, and I do some drawing. So like,
but do you have like a website or a platform that you share?
It's just Instagram. So I think it's just Chris.Weakley1.
Chris.Weakley1. Okay.
Yeah.
So and then for all your fans out there.
Yeah. So it's I'm not quite the TV box office draw yet. So
yes, but you will be.
we'll get there eventually. But yeah, I'm always like willing to talk about it too. And if you have questions about it, but hey, like I was thinking about this. What do you think? Like, yeah, like go do it. Like I'll tell you about it and tell you more about it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Awesome. Well, Chris, it's been amazing talking to you, and your story is so inspiring.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I say thanks for having me. Like, I really appreciate it, and hopefully, inspire some people to like go try the arts, and kind of be a little open to it, and just remember to give yourself some permission to be happy, and you've experienced a lot, and give yourself permission to be happy and open.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, I'm inspired myself. So I'm just thinking how many latent artists there are out there that are going to listen to this podcast and just say, this is the day, I'm ready. I'm going to start on my blank slate and just create and live and be present. So that's just incredible. Incredible. So we're going to end this podcast with our favorite things. So I'm going to ask you a couple of your favorite things. Okay. So you ready?
All right, let's go for it.
Okay. Who is your favorite actor or actress, or both?
I would probably say like favorite actor. I say like right now, like old school actor. One of my favorite actors is James Cagney, because he was just like, learn your lines, plant your feet, say what you mean. And so like so like. Playing a notorious gangster on black and white films, like I've always just tried to keep that to mind as like those three things. Just do those three things. Kind of like in the military, you're gonna get promoted. Just show up on time. Somewhat do your job and wear the right uniform. Like you're gonna get promoted. Like go at it. So I would say that that he's one of that, or James Stewart. James Stewart, because he also fought in World War II, and he brought a lot of trauma. Brought a lot of trauma back from war, flying fighter bombers in World War II.
Wow. Very cool. What is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I don't know if I have a favorite. I have like a huge array, but we'll just go with my favorite horror movie. John Carpenter's The Thing, starring Kurt Russell, is probably like my favorite. Well, let's go with favorite horror movie. Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite role that you have ever played?
So there's a short that they're editing right now where I finally get to play a bad guy, and it was amazing. Just being mean and vicious and just kind of letting loose, and there was some stunt stuff I got to do and break a breakable vase over this woman's head.
Oh my god!
So that was pretty cool, and the clip is really cool to see, watching this like grab this vase and smash it on her head.
Holy cow!
So that was definitely like an interesting thing, is to be just like being mean and vicious, but also like subtle about it until I break the glass vase on her head. But playing the villain was definitely like a really cool thing for me. So
you're talking about all these shorts that you're doing, but is there any way for people to see the shorts, or is that your portfolio?
So I'll send you something, and then we can like post it.
Yeah, because I think the community would love to see some of your acting.
Yeah, so after this, I will send you a link to some stuff, all right?
People are going to be like, we want to see you be the villain.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and the last favorite question. Aside from acting, what is your favorite hobby or thing to do in your spare time?
So people that have known me, like I also do magic. So magic has also been like one of my comfort things as well. Cause it's like, to me, it's like the perfect icebreaker, especially if you don't know it's coming. So I know people from like units that have seen me do a bunch of magic for them, like at units that I've been in. So that's probably like one of my other favorite hobbies that I like to do, just because it helps with the nerves too, because it helps with the acting stuff, because you have to think this whole pattern of like making this trick interesting and entertaining and drawing them in. So it's like one of these two things I can kind of like merge together of, you know, being comfortable, because you do get nervous and tricks go wrong. It literally has happened to it happens to everyone. Like, you know, just things go wrong, and, you know, finding ways like, all right, cool, can I still cover this trick and whatnot, and gives you experience doing things in front of people. Mm-hmm. So if I do it for people, like, you know, that I don't know, then it's like, all right, if I mess up, then I'll never see these people ever again. So it doesn't matter. So that's I'd probably say that's my other main hobby that I really like to do.
Well, I was not expecting that. That was
yeah. It's pretty fun when I'll do some stuff unexpected and people are like, what? But I would say it's, you're more likely to find that type of stuff here in LA than you would have in Atlanta. Yeah. So I did a lot more in Atlanta.
How just fun!
Yes. So.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, again for being with us and taking the time out to share some of your journey and how art therapy has helped you.
Yeah, no problem. And again, if people have questions, you know, feel free to send me a message on like Facebook or Instagram.
Right on.
Glad to help you as I can.
Yeah, right on. Well, we are very excited for you and looking forward to seeing what acting opportunities come your way.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
You're welcome. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to our Behind the Warrior podcast, brought to you by the EOD Warrior Foundation. The EOD Warrior Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving the EOD community by providing financial assistance, scholarships, and providing hope and wellness resources for the active duty, reserve, National Guard, retired, and veteran EOD communities and their families. We also honor our fallen and wounded EOD technicians by maintaining the EOD Memorial and Remembrance Garden. We do all this through the generosity of individual and corporate donors and sponsors. If you would like to assist the foundation or support our Behind the Warrior podcast, click the link on our webpage at eodwarriorfoundation.org or contact us at info@eodwarriorfoundation.org. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to tell a friend. The various opinions, beliefs, and viewpoints expressed by guests, contributors, and participants of the Behind the Warrior podcast are their own and are intended for informational purposes only. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions, beliefs, viewpoints, or policies of the EOD Warrior Foundation or its employees and volunteers.